Welcome to the Decoding Story-Based Marketing Podcast, where we help businesses create killer messaging that unlocks their marketing potential. In today's episode, we discuss two frameworks that have been really embraced by product and marketing leaders. Today, we want to explore how product leaders leverage jobs to be done and how marketing leaders use StoryBrand, and then what we can learn from each other. I'm your host, Kristen, and I am joined by my Decoded co-founder, Annie, and we are very excited to introduce Ben Hanzo, principal at Setpiece, a product strategy consulting firm. Hi, Ben. Hi, Annie.
What's up?
Hey, Kristen. Oh my gosh, Ben, we're so excited to have you here.
Very excited to be here.
Okay, well, we have a very cool conversation today. And as we jump in, I do want to acknowledge we're heading into fall, you guys.
Oh, thank the Lord.
I mean, you wouldn't know it because it's 108
It's the actual surface of the sun.
So disgusting. It really legit is.
I went to pick my kids up from school yesterday, and I had to the whole rest of the day I was just recovering from being outside in 108 degrees picking them up. So, however, it is fall, and that has not stopped me from decorating my house. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking around, and Annie, you have also decorated your house.
Yeah, we were like a September 1st Halloween. Decorations went up.
Totally. Pumpkin candles when it's 110 degrees outside. I love it. So for me, fall means movies. I love movies in the fall. So what have you guys watched recently that you loved, or what are you really excited about?
Well, my husband and I love horror movies. So we have started on a horror movie kick. We have created a whole list of all the movies we want to see. And then we kind of pick one at random whenever we're up for a movie. So that has been fun. There have been some not so good ones, which The Pope's Exorcist was terrible. Kristen will never see that. I don't know if you have any interest in horror movies, but for anybody, don't watch that one. But we did watch a movie the other night that was so good. It's called Oddity. Creepy movie. There's some interesting occulty stuff in there, but highly, highly recommend. So that's the vibe that we've been into recently.
Amazing. Ben, what about you? What are you watching these days?
I mean, I'm 100% prestige TV right now. So my movie situation is a little bit underdeveloped. As we get into Oscar season, we will start picking up what are the movies that we are required as Angelinos to see so that we can be part of the conversation. I tend more towards emotional damage versus the horror jump scare type thing. So I'll be more inclined towards very slow moving adult stories about people's feelings. That's how I roll.
Love it.
Highbrow.
Highbrow. Very, very highbrow.
I went and saw Alien Romulus recently.
Oh,
perfect movie.
So good.
Perfect movie. And one of the things that I loved about it, and this is going to relate to what we're talking about today, I feel like it perfectly followed the rules of movie. Like we opened up, we saw immediately the final girl. I know she's going to be okay. Sorry for the spoilers. Final girl. And I know this is going to follow the rules, but still I was on the edge of my seat and surprised the whole movie. So it was perfect in terms of following a framework, but also just gorgeous. And the sets.
I loved it. I love all the Alien movies.
Yeah, me too. Okay, well,
I'm staring at Ben because I know he is not a fan.
I have seen one of the movies of the Alien MCU.
Which one?
I don't remember. Maybe Prometheus or something
which
like
is
that?
Also one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah. And that one wasn't very alien-y. It was much more video
existential.
Yeah, emotional damage.
Yeah.
There we go.
Back to memory.
There we go.
Fun fact, my husband did a children's book, an alien children's book that was through the actual, what's the word? I don't know. They brought him in to do it. So it's very cute. It's the cutest little face hugger ever. Okay. Well, let's jump in, guys. So today, we're going to have a bit of an Avengers of the Frameworks conversation. We want to bring together two frameworks that we really love, we really use, and we want to talk about how we can learn from each other with these frameworks. So, we ready to jump in?
Love it.
Okay. So, we're talking about two frameworks today. The first, jobs to be done from the product side of the house. You guys can't see me, but I'm pointing at Ben for that. And then StoryBrand from the marketing side of the house, and I'm pointing at Annie. So let's get into this. First things first, I'm going to really channel Michael Scott here from The Office. Ben, explain to me like I'm a kindergartner. Jobs to be done. What is it?
Yes. So I am somewhat overwhelmed by anxiety at being the spokesperson for jobs to be done because it's, a very sort of sprawling and broad framework that people leverage or don't leverage or don't use in lots of different ways. So I'll talk about how I see it and how I found it to be useful. And the core of jobs to be done that I see in product and marketing is that it's a framework for discovering demand. So the core of that is that customers are really solution agnostic when they make a buying decision. They're just trying to hire a product to help them accomplish a particular job. So the sort of like I'm 5 example of this is when someone goes to the hardware store and they buy a drill bit of a certain size, what they're really trying to do is get a hole in their wall of that size. And you could imagine them hiring many different solutions based on their capabilities, their budget, whatever constraints they're under to get that hole in the wall. They could hire a tasker to come do it. Like they could use a pencil and stab the wall a bunch of times, whatever sort of they find at hand that helps them make progress towards what they're trying to make progress towards. And the magic to me of this is that we have to imagine these jobs or needs as being somewhat universal and somewhat out of time, meaning they're not tied to a particular solution or way somebody is doing it today, but they are things that people have needed to do for some generally long period of time. And, obviously we can bound that to like the modern company or whatever, but the things that people are trying to achieve, particularly when we sell software to them, are not unique. They are things that lots of people are trying to do and that lots of people are trying to help them solve. And so that's kind of how we arrive at demand discovery, because once we understand the jobs, we can look at how are those things being accomplished today. And that helps us really understand, does anybody care about solving this problem? Is it important to them? Is it a thing that they're like running around doing a bunch of stuff to try to get done today where we could help them do it more effectively? And we can see, okay, who's our competitive set and where are our growth opportunities? So from a product lens, jobs is like a really important starting place to locate the value we think we're going to deliver to our customers and where we sit in the market before we start going down the path of how are we going to build a product? How are we going to build a solution?
Okay, I'm very excited to dig into this because, we think all the time, I'm not going to get ahead of us, about the framework that we use to really make sure that we position our products as necessary. And I think there's going to be some cool intersections that we get into there. So fantastic. Thank you for that overview, Ben. Okay, Annie, your turn. We use the StoryBrand framework for marketing. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah. So the big principle, I think, underneath StoryBrand is, humans are really drawn to the power of story. And when you think of any really good story, whether it's aliens or a book or whatever that is, it always follows the same framework. A lot of people know this as the hero's journey. And so when we really apply some of those frameworks that are like tried and true storytelling methodology to marketing, it just provides a common language that we can really connect with our audience around. So some of the big principles in this framework that we use are really, a lot of brands, when it comes to marketing, place themselves at the center of the story. They talk all about themselves, but we really believe that the story you need to tell is actually the story of your customer. So the customer is the hero. And then what is the journey that they are on in encountering a problem, how they need to really overcome that problem. And the role of the brand is that of the trusted guide who is helping the hero be successful. So we find it to just be a really useful tool to kind of get in the right mindset to market a brand and really place a customer at the center of that, and then to communicate in a way that's going to resonate with them very effectively.
Awesome. So I think that there's going to be quite a Venn diagram on what we can learn from each other in this. So I'm curious, Ben, we've talked to you about StoryBrand for a really long time. What are the things that jump out to you as we dig into this framework that might inform your work or be useful to your work in product?
I mean, obviously the core focus on a problem. And I think, we've sort of worked on engagements together and sort of had these kinds of conversations, but getting folks, particularly folks who have been really deep in executing on a product for some extended period of time and have had to think every day about like solve, getting them to flip into the mindset of problem discovery and problem understanding and problem location and prioritization before getting into solution. And then on the marketing side, getting them to flip their positioning, their way they describe the product into not what it does, but what problems it solves, has huge impact throughout the whole cycle. Because what we see on the product side and in customer success as well is like, if we haven't set our customers up to have the right expectation of the progress they're going to make or the problems that are going to be solved for them, they just come in looking for buttons to click. And if they don't find the buttons that they want, we end up having this really draining conversation for both of us about how they can get the buttons they want, as opposed to having set them up to say, this is the value you're going to get from this product. This is the progress it's going to help you make. Here's how we believe that's best done with this product. That might mean some changes on your end, Or maybe we discover that like it's not totally meeting that expectation today, and then we can talk about how we change the product. But we're now in a shared, like a collaborative game of how do we make progress against this problem where we've set the right expectation for everyone.
I feel like I learned so much about marketing before I even knew I was learning about marketing when I was in customer success and Ben was in product.
Mm-hmm.
And this is early in my tech career. So, a lot of this was learning in general, but we had one particular prospect who will not be named, who had a lot of demands. They need a lot of buttons to click, so to speak. And that was really challenging because I wanted to get him across the line. It was like a really big potential deal. And they wanted a lot of stuff we just couldn't build. And I remember the tension that created around, okay, but they need this thing. But we never actually had the opportunity with them to get into like, okay, but like, what's the problem or the job that you're trying to do with that? Do you just want SSO because that's what, somebody said from the IT department that is a requirement on the software? Or is it something that's actually required? And so I just think it's such an interesting lens of like across everything, if it comes back down to what is the outcome or the job that people are trying to accomplish? What is a problem that necessitates a solution, right, to be able to accomplish that outcome? Like, that's really where it comes back to. And I just remember like being in that challenging situation and so frustrated at the time. But I think it taught me a lot actually about marketing all the way from back then.
Yeah. Well, and I think spending time with you all and learning about this StoryBrand framework, the timeline aspect of it really resonates with me as well, because on the product side, there's this bad habit of forgetting that people were somewhere before they used their product and they went somewhere after. And you just think that they've just like teleported into the page they're looking at and that they're just going to click some stuff and leave. Whereas, StoryBrand does a really good job of placing folks on a timeline and on a journey, which is a part of what I like about jobs as well. And forcing you to remember like, okay, well, they're starting here. Here's like what's going on around them. Like, here's what they're dealing with outside of your stuff. And then here's how you're going to help them, but all the other stuff that's going to happen around them. And that sort of context of the journey for them is really a thing that I really love about the way that StoryBrand pulls marketing and positioning together into something very useful that really aligns with how I like to try to make the flip on the product side.
Ben, as you were kind of laying out that explanation of what jobs to be done is, what that really unlocked for me is maybe some new ways of helping helping our clients articulate the problem that their product is supposed to solve. Because we always meet we do a lot of brand messaging workshops, or I always start with saying, okay, what is the problem that you were here to solve? And sometimes that can be a really hard thing to narrow down, can be a really hard thing to get through. But with that idea of people have always been trying to do this job, and there's a reason that they need to do it in a different way. And that reason, they actually may not even recognize it yet until they realize there's a product out for this. But really kind of getting into it in that way of what have they been trying to do? What's not working about that? Or what could be better? And then how do we anchor that in a problem could be really compelling in a way to overlap those frameworks.
Yeah. Well, there's the scenario. I remember this so vividly. It was one of our, I think, most powerful workshops that we had, where there was a company that sold commercial refrigeration. And we were trying to really guide them through, okay, you need some new messaging, you need some positioning, and you want to grow. So we know what you do, right? You offer different solutions for commercial refrigeration. What is the problem that you solve? And they said, oh, yeah, we got this. Well, the problem that we solve is that people need commercial refrigeration. And we're like, okay, cool. That's the thing you sell. That's awesome. But what is the problem? And it was such a challenge and so difficult. And I'm curious, Ben, like when it comes to working with people that have that idea, I have an idea for commercial refrigeration. How do you guide them to really think about the demand versus the supply and the problem that they need to figure out?
One of the first questions I usually ask when I start working with folks is, what do your customer conversations look like today? When are you doing them? In what context? What are you talking to them about? And the general response is, oh, of course we talk to customers. Okay, when? Well, usually in the sales process or in the customer success process.
Right.
Okay, cool. So what's happening in those conversations? Well, we're trying to get them across the sales journey and like sell them the product, or we're trying to deal with them, like try to make sure that they retain. So often the first step is having customer conversations outside of the context of your sales and customer success processes. And there's a great book on this called The Mom Test, where you come to those customers to really try to understand, do they actually want your product?
Yeah.
And you come with listening and empathy, and you ask them about their business and about their problems. And Jobs has a really great framework for this that focuses on switching moments. And these are the moments that we can get the best insights about how people make buying decisions for your product. And it's really important that folks consider both consumption and non-consumption so that we talk to the folks who didn't purchase and we understand, well, what did they purchase instead?
Yeah.
Why didn't they purchase? Right. And that gives us a ton of data on like, well, presumably they saw a solution to their problem with us. They chose something else. What does that tell us about where we're falling down along that journey? And it may be a product issue, but it more likely is a positioning or a sales process issue. And some stuff is going to fall out because, this is an enterprise customer that has boxes that have to be checked and we should have qualified them out in the beginning.
Sure.
But a lot of the time it's can we actually have good structured conversations that drive insights for us around what are the problems? Or are we just do we just have a technology that we think is valuable that we're trying to shove into the market? And that honestly can take you a really long way, and it can take you all the way sometimes. But in a lot of the sort of more incremental cases where we're really having to grind out the growth of the company, we have to get in there with customers and really understand what we're doing for them.
Yeah.
That's helpful to think about in terms of, what are those conversations doing for us beyond just the sales conversations? We've been kind of in our business, Annie, lately as we help clients build messaging, interviewing customers before we even get into it. And sometimes our clients are like, well, why do you need to do this? I'm like, well, we need to hear from their perspective what problem is solved before we even start doing this. So it could be so helpful to not just rely on those sales conversations, but actually show up without a bias to just learn from our customers. Okay, so Ben, I'm curious, we've been working kind of side by side on some things, and, you've heard about the StoryBrand framework from us, I'm sure because we talk about it all the time. What are some things that you've really taken away or that feel useful to you in your work in product?
So, I think the thing that I like about StoryBrand is how practical it is.
Yeah.
I think there are a variety of frameworks or books or whatever that help you sort of extract your positioning out of, your sales information or whatever. And that kind of get you to the point where you're like, okay, I understand generally how I want to position my product, or I understand my job's to be done, but really knowing what to do with that.
Yeah.
And having a structure to hang it on that's going to actually let you go out. You got to redo your website. Okay, well, how?
Right.
You got to redo your email sequence, your onboard, there's all this collateral that has to get created. And StoryBrand is as good as I've seen of okay, here's the framework that we can use and the process we can run to get you that foundational document that you can then jump off from into all these other places and know you're going to stay aligned with all of this work you do.
That's actually really interesting because I feel the same way about the jobs to be done framework. And when we've come onto a client situation that you've gone through that process with them and seeing the output of that makes it so much easier for us to dive into the questions that we need to, because you've already started to do that thinking around what are the problems, right? What are the jobs? What are the needs? And so it starts to kind of narrow in the thinking a little bit on what we need. And so it's how you get there, means to an end. I'm sure there are a bazillion product frameworks and conversations and ways that you can approach that. But how applicable and useful the output is one of the reasons that I love coming in on a marketing project where a jobs to be done exercise has happened beforehand. I think it's great.
Yeah. And I think the real magic, if you can nail it, is turning the product and marketing relationship into a collaborative game where everybody is winning together, right? As opposed to a zero sum. Because theoretically, there's a world, and this is often not the case, where we've created such good alignment between the value we're trying to deliver by building the product and the messaging and the sort of ways that we're trying to get folks to hear about us and bring them in to understand the product are so deeply aligned that we're growing the pie together, right? And everything we deliver on the product side is really adding to the value that we're talking about with customers. We're setting the right expectation with them. They're coming in ready to go. So they're succeeding. Onboarding's going great, right? So there is this opportunity to create a different game in between product and marketing that I have seen sort of unlocked when you've got this stuff going on together.
Yeah, there's a magic that happens where it's, okay, I'm going to mess up this phrase, but it's the total is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
When you bring together marketing and product and use these frameworks, they work together in a way that totals even greater than you started. So it's very cool. All right. Well, this has been an awesome conversation, guys. So as we wrap up, thank you for joining us for the Decoding Story-Based Marketing Podcast. If this was helpful, please subscribe and leave us a rating. And for more information on Decoded Strategies, visit decodedstrategies.com, or you can connect with us on LinkedIn. We will talk to you soon. Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.